Tonight will be a special night as we learn about the brave men of the 100th Infantry Battalion. As one way to continue their legacy, this challenge was created. We are so glad that you are here to experience firsthand how the accomplishments and values of these brave men and families have made a difference in the thinking of our challenge participants now and into the future. I'm Sheila Biukajar, one of the two challenge coordinators and your host for tonight's event. Please allow me to introduce to you our other challenge coordinator, Ms. Sherilyn Lau. Along with the Challenge Planning Committee, together we are proud to say aloha and welcome to the 100th Infantry Battalion's Challenge Student presentations. Please sit back, listen, and learn about the projects developed by our youth in response to this challenge. And to provide you with our opening remarks, please welcome Kathleen Hayashi.
Hello, can y'all hear me good? Okay, awesome. My name is Kathy Hayashi, and you see a picture there of my father. Oh, hello, everybody. Thank you for coming on Friday night. I really appreciate that. My name is Kathy Hayashi, and my father, Tokuichi Hayashi, served in the original unit of the 100th Infantry Battalion. I'm currently president of ABLE chapter of the 100 Veterans Organization. On behalf of the 100th Project-Based Learning team, I want to thank you for joining us for the inaugural presentations by the first group of students. These young people bravely accepted the challenge to come up with an innovative solution to a problem or issue facing Hawaii today by incorporating the values with which the 100th Infantry Battalion soldiers fought heroically in World War II. On June 12th, we will be celebrating the 80th anniversary of the formation of this unit. As adults, we often overlook our young people's strengths. We remember the grit with which our fathers went to war and believe that another generation will never be able to repeat what they did. However, our participation in this project-based learning taught us that young people are willing to step forward and accept challenges and give it their all for a worthy cause. The young people whose presentations you're about to watch had nothing to gain by accepting this challenge. No grade, no extra credit, no excusal from other assignments, and yet they poured their hearts and souls into developing a creative solution to an issue facing our island home by employing the values the 100th Battalion soldiers took into battle: to work hard, persevere, to represent their families, their homeland, Hawaii, their country, America, and they did this proudly. To our students, through your participation in this inaugural project-based learning PBL challenge, you have planted the seeds for a new and brighter future that not only preserves the legacy of the 100th Infantry Battalion, but also expands it by connecting it with issues of relevance in today's world. I hope you enjoyed interacting with mentors from the 100th Battalion who shared their experiences and values taught by their fathers, some of whom were commanders of the 100th Infantry Battalion. The seeds you planted by accepting the challenge are already sprouting and flourishing. And Mariko is nodding because we've got lots of people in this community that really support the men and the students and what we're trying to do. Flourishing, because as we wrap up this first PBL, we are in discussion with a high school that desires to engage their entire 9th grade academy of over 700 students to accept the challenge to solve a problem or issue by using the tools that were so successful for the men of the 100th Battalion. You can be proud, you students, that you planted the first seeds of possibilities. This project has also piqued the interest of Olelo Community Television, which wants to share your projects with their viewing audiences. Olelo will also be launching a documentary series about Hawaii's heroes, and their first episode will be about Hawaii's homegrown 100th Infantry Battalion. Through your projects, the tenacity, courage, and valor of the 100th, the Purple Heart Battalion, will live on. By continuing to honor the past and build for the future, together, kupuna and students can solve many of Hawaii's problems. To the students, our fathers are proud of you. And to the students, final words from me, I would say, some of you are going off to, getting prepared to go off to college and all of this, but you planted the seeds, so please help to tend the garden that you planted by continuing to be ambassadors in spreading the story of Hawaii's heroes, the 100th Infantry Battalion. Thank you again. We are all so excited to hear what you learned about the 100th and how you have linked their history to your creative ideas to improve the lives of all. Through your effort, the motto of the 100th Battalion, where is it right here? For continuing service lives on. Thank you and continue to dream big.
Mahalo nui loa, Kathleen. So before we introduce our first presenters, let me just take you to a quick outline of what this challenge was all about, where Kathleen had hinted that this was a challenge for students from middle school and high school. And in just 8 short weeks, we asked them to innovate either as part of a team, as part of a class or organization, or as an individual. And we have all of that for you tonight. They were challenged to identify an issue or problem, and that we hoped that it would be guided by and informed by their passions and strengths. Second, as they focused on important issues or problems within their community, with their growing knowledge about the 100th Battalion and the values, the sacrifices, the contributions and accomplishments, we hope it would further fuel their creativity in developing a solution with their projects and their ideas and thoughts. And third, as a way to put a voice to their thoughts and ideas, that they would be able to present them to you tonight as we provide them a space for their voices to be heard and for all of us to celebrate their thoughtful and resilient work. There are 3 outcomes that they all completed. The first is a project research report and reflection. The second, their project, their ideas. And tonight is their project presentation. So we hope you'll see that this challenge allowed these youth to incorporate their passions and interests with values, contributions, and accomplishments of the 100th Infantry Battalion, in hope that these connections can continue to help all of us now and in the future. So let's get started with our first presenters. And that's Shane and Cy Kaneshiro. Shane is a sophomore at McKinley High School, and Cy is the 8th grader at Stevenson Middle. So you've got this, you've got the stage.
You fought not only the enemy, but you fought prejudice, And you won.
The 100th Infantry Battalion fought in Europe and became America's most highly decorated unit for its size and length of service. The following 71 of McKinley's students and alumni who fought valiantly paid the ultimate sacrifice for the country that treated them as the enemy.
Dr. Miles E. Carey is revolutionary in what is taught in public schools in Hawaii. Dr. Carey is also vital to what is taught to the Nisei during World War II, and where many other students that graduated or dropped out of McKinley High School to help the war effort learned their virtues that became ingrained into U.S. history, and why they were so revolutionary. Dr. Carey did this by creating a curriculum that stressed on the values of citizenship, initiative, individuality, leadership, and self-reliance, while respecting the multicultural composition of the student body and also creating clubs that encourage academic work and citizenship. Dr. Carey changed the curriculum that was taught in public schools in Hawaii during the time. Normally, what would be taught at public schools in Hawaii was mostly agricultural because of the plantations. When Dr. Carey arrived at McKinley High School after being a principal in Ferndale, Washington, in the curriculum, he stressed on the multicultural composition of the student body. Two ideals that influenced students during this time was in the Declaration of Independence was stated that all men are created equal in the sight of God and are entitled to an equal opportunity to make the most of their talents, and that if a social system is inimical to equal opportunity, it should be overturned. During the war, he addresses the students of Japanese ancestry. He stated, "Japan is our enemy, and accordingly, it is only natural that considerable suspicion would be extended to the descendants of our present enemy." This shows that although they feel that it is unjust that everyone should be suspicious of them, Dr. Carey, in this statement, shows that the suspicion should be natural. I believe that the quote is how the DC accepted the injustice that they faced and how they were able to persevere throughout the war. Dr. Carey also developed clubs that encourage academic work and citizenship. This is because he also reinforced the multicultural composition and how to be proud of their country that they live in. During the war, when both their parents' or grandparents' country and their own are at war and that they face injustice. Dr. Carey wrote an opinion, "Today is the day for you to show by both words and deeds what America means to you." This quote shows that the students of McKinley High School should actively participate in the war to show that the Nisei called America their home and would die for their country, if necessary, just as much as everyone else, no matter their ancestry. Dr. Carey also states in opinion, "The kind of world we are going to have depends to a considerable extent on the spirit of some millions of young Americans who now thoroughly hate the totalitarian way and passionately love the American way." This quote shows how Dr. Carey knew the impact the Nisei would have on America when they joined the war effort and persevered, despite the hate given by both sides of the war. I believe that Dr. Carey was telling the students of McKinley High School how their actions and love for America that was taught in school can change not just Hawaii, but the world. Ultimately, Dr. Carey played a big role in why the Nisei fought so valiantly during the war, before and during. This was because in the curriculum he taught at McKinley High School. Although Dr. Carey was a big factor in why the Nisei fought so valiantly during World War II, another factor was the values that are taught in their household. As a Gosei, or fifth-generation Japanese American, 77 years after the conflict, those values are still instilled in me.
On December 7, 1941, Japan bombed Pearl Harbor. The people of Japanese descent faced discrimination and were labeled as the enemy. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt declared war on Japan and signed the Act 9066. The reason being that the Japanese descendants were deemed dangerous to the war efforts. The Nisei, or second-generation Japanese Americans who enlisted in the Hawaii National Guard 298th and 299th Infantry, were detached in May 1942. Lieutenant General Emmons formed a new unit as the Hawaii Provisional Infantry Battalion. The racially segregated unit boarded the SS Maui to the mainland. Once arriving in Oakland, California, the 100th Infantry Battalion was officially named. The Nisei identified themselves as one Puka Puka. In the book, Unlikely Liberators, Lieutenant Colonel Farron L. Turner is referred as the Old Man and often assembled the entire unit for a Monday morning talk. Lieutenant Colonel Turner explained the importance to the Nisei that the future of their families rests on their shoulders and it's their chance to go to the front. If they risk their lives on the battlefield and return home triumphantly, they could be sure of being accepted as full-fledged Americans. First Lieutenant Sakae Takahashi, 24 years old, stressed the importance to his fellow comrades. We are fighting two wars, one for American democracy and one against the prejudice toward us in America. The 100 Battalion's motto, Remember Pearl Harbor, shows that they're loyal to the United States of America and angered at the attack on their country. The 100 Battalion faced the deadly campaign of Salerno to Cassino. The battalion suffered heavy casualties and thus earning the nickname of Purple Heart Battalion. On September 29, 1943, Sergeant Shigeo Takata, the first casualty of the battalion, McKinley's famed power-hitting shortstop, son, and husband, was fatally wounded by an artillery shell. From the Puka Puka Parade, October 2012, Private First Class Robert Tomiya Sato still recounts the last words of Sergeant Takata that were relayed by the soldiers who were with Sergeant Takata upon his final moments. His words, keep on going, keep on going, keep on going. An hour later, Keiichi Tanaka of Company B, 24 years old and also a McKinney alumni, was killed by a hidden German machine gun crew. Private Minoru Tokuyama, McKinley's alumni, the youngest casualty of 19 years old, was killed in action near Capriati, Italy in the Salerno to Cassino campaign. During the Battle of Belvedere, Major General John E. Delaquist ordered the Texan Battalion to engage the enemy. However, they were cut off and attempts to rescue them by the 141st Infantry and two other battalions failed. The 100 Battalion, with the combined forces of the 442nd Regimental Combat Team, broke through the enemy lines and rescued 211 men of the lost battalion. These Nisei were willing to die to prove their loyalty to their country. The 71 100th Battalion fallen soldiers of McKinley High School, who valiantly fought for their nation, were awarded with 2 Distinguished Service Crosses, 11 Silver Stars, and 4 Bronze Stars. They fought off the Germans and liberated France and Italy from German occupation. President Harry S. Truman said, "You have fought not only the enemy, but you fought prejudice, and you won." We would like to thank our 3 mentors, Mr. Kerry Miyashiro, Ms. Charlotte Uni, and Ms. Bev Descaldi, for providing their fathers and their comrades' experiences at as a 100 Battalion soldier that provided insight into the lives during and after the war.
Mahalo Shane and Sai for your historical presentation. We appreciate your words of wisdom and you being here and your willingness to share all of your knowledge with us this evening.
I'd like to give some feedback to Sai and Shane too. This is Tsurumi Hamasu. I'm a daughter of a 100th Battalion veteran, and I recognize two names on your all through your pictures. Of course, I recognize Joe Takata because we all know he was the first of the 100th Battalion to pass in the war. But I also recognize, and I was so surprised to see my uncle, Tadashi Otoguro. I didn't realize he went to McKinley, to your school, Shane. Oh. So that was so surprising to me. So thank you very much for the care that you took in showing all of the men from McKinley who passed and the honors they received, the meticulous work you did, and learning taps, because that is, for me, a very powerful and way to honor the soldiers who died for us. Thank you very much.
One more thing, I also wrote a resolution to keep the name of McKinley by honoring those fallen soldiers. So there's 132 of them, and 71 of them with the original 100 Battalion, or 60 of them, with 11 of them with the replacements.
Thank you.
And we would also like to thank their advisors, Lisa Kaneshiro, and mentor Charlotte Yamamoto, Bev Descalzi, and Carrie Miyashiro. Again, mahalo.
I just wanted to say that these boys worked so incredibly hard. When they were just about ready to finish, they lost everything and they had to do it all over again. Just stamina, persistence, and dedication. Incredible job, boys. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us and sharing your voice as well. All right, as we move on, our next presenter is Mr. Ken Nakatsu. He is a senior at Punahou. Ken, you've got this.
All right, wonderful. So hi, everyone. My name is Ken Nakatsu. And for my 100th PBL, I decided to look into Hawaii's houseless veterans and the roots of this issue. So before I dive a little bit deeper into what I did, I'd like to give a brief overview of the topics I'll be talking about today. So firstly, I'll be going to why I chose houseless veterans and what inspired me to go down this route. Then I'll go into what I sort of did to create my solution or product. And then finally, I'll go into what the products were and the communities I attempted to reach with its release. So inspiration can materialize from just about anything, right? But my experience with my parents inspired me to look deeper into the issue of veteran houselessness. So first of all, my dad works for the VA, Veterans Affairs, and I'm super proud of him, and has treated a wide array of veterans from the houseless to the most wealthy. And the stories of unimaginable struggle, suffering, and resilience from the houseless veterans always stuck out to me as special. This created a spark of interest that was catalyzed by my mother's breast cancer diagnosis a few years back. Our relationship became toxic and she fell into a deep depression. Eventually, we were able to mend our relationship, albeit not easily, through listening. I realized that she felt unheard during this time and alone during these treatments. And this made me think, aren't there whole groups of people that feel unheard like she did? Do they harbor the same feelings of resentment and anger as my mom did? I'd later find out that the answer to this question was yes. At this point, though, I asked a question that would guide me for the next year. Why aren't we listening to the stories of houseless veterans when we claim that we want to help them? So from here, I kind of settle onto a project goal to build compassion and dissolve social stigmas towards houseless veterans. But how would I do this in a modern way? Moreover, how would I do this in a society where attention is a commodity fought over by social media companies and tech giants? These questions were far too big for me to answer at this point, and I had to understand the issue itself a little bit better before I could go deeper into those questions. So my journey actually began with two nonprofits, US Vets and Provisional. This represented my first steps into another world, and this world was not what I expected it to be. During my time at Provisional, I worked with houseless kids, and I put together activities for them. Again, I found that they had the most compelling and interesting stories, just as the houseless veterans did. One of them actually told me about this time they climbed the mountain, free climbing, when they were just 10. With US Vets, I hosted a little talk story sessions where I offered an opportunity for the veterans to share their stories with the world. And I recorded these stories, and I happened to obtain over 10 hours of recordings. So after I spent some fun hours listening to these in my car, room, and with others, I realized that there were some common themes that kept on appearing, and that these themes often align with those of the 100th Infantry Battalion. I found that both groups highly valued perseverance, honor, respect, and pride. The veterans I talked to at US Vets were adamant about keeping their brothers in check and off the streets of Oahu. This reminded me of the 100th Battalion, as the stories I read about them, it showed that they never left anybody behind in combat and beyond. I also realized that both of these groups were neglected by government and society, albeit one was because of race and the other because of socioeconomic status and their past. So both had to deal with stigmatization, discrimination, and hate from the general public or citizens. And once again, just as it was for my mom's relationship, my relationship with my mom, storytelling and listening is a way to dissolve barriers that prevent us from actually discussing and solving these issues. So along with some similarities between the two groups, it's important to consider the differences. So many houseless veterans are from the Vietnam War. That's something I found. And veterans from that time had issues with their GI Bill and benefits, which severely limited their opportunities, which is one reason why they ended up on the streets. Along with that, most houseless veterans had some sort of traumatic childhood or very difficult early family life. I remember clearly one veteran asking me what family meant, and I said, a group of people that love and care for you. And he laughed at me. He said that love didn't exist in his household, that love was a word he never heard. I'd say, for a needed generalization, the main difference was that Japanese 100th veterans suffered more before and during service, while houseless veterans suffered more after their service. One is not worse than the other. We're not trying to compare how much each group suffered. They were just different circumstances. So now, houselessness and racial discrimination, these are two very different problems. However, they do sit on the basic pyramid format of issues, I believe. So there are the direct issues that stem from local legislation, like food insecurity and rent insecurity. There's social society's decision to, make a change if you recognize that something is morally wrong. And then there's awareness, being aware that the actual issue is wrong. Like before they didn't think that that discriminating against the Japanese was a bad thing. It was seen as national security. And then finally, there are the ingrained societal beliefs and stigmas, which are things that people associate with groups without really thinking about it. In the case of the 100th, it was that all Japanese are bad. And in the case of the houseless veterans, it's that they're a little bit too insane and too hard to help. And these are untrue. So it was the target of my project to break down those negative societal beliefs and stigma. So now for the big question, how did I attempt to address this? So firstly, I worked and funded a recently housed veteran to create a beautiful art piece that would depict his time on the streets of Oahu. If you look at the picture over there, it represents him being born, graduating high school, which is something I'll be doing soon. He gets married, goes through the service. He even put a little bit about his disability, and eventually, because of substance abuse, he ends up on the street, which is an incredibly sad story. But with US Vets, he was able to become healthy again. And this general piece would serve as the backbone to my website, which contains stories about many different aspects of houselessness in Hawaii. Further, I also produced a video using royalty-free stock footage that highlights some of the headliners of veteran houselessness that I heard from the stories of the veterans. Unfortunately, with the amount of time I have today, I'm unable to share it, but I'll send a link in the chat, and I do think it's something worth checking out. Or, if we have extra time at the end, we could, spend some time watching it, although it is 8 minutes, so I wouldn't want to take more time out of your Friday. So these products were first released at Punahou School. The video itself was shown to over 1,500 students through a chapel message, and it was connected with this message about compassion for others. And it was really beautiful. I worked with my chaplain on this, and I was really happy with how it came out. Additionally, the piece was displayed at my school with some other artwork from other houseless artists. I also created a little curricular support system that teachers use as a lesson to stimulate discussion about the topic. During the time period of this challenge, I connected with Noa Tanigawa from Hawaii Public Radio, one of my greatest role models, and I love listening to her in the morning and in the afternoon sometimes. And we basically worked together to get this art piece on my website to travel to another exhibit that's being hosted this summer. It's really exciting for me, at least, and I can't wait to see how the stories of these veterans spread throughout the community. So the efforts and products that resulted from this challenge, I believe, honor the 100th Infantry Battalion through 3 main ways. So firstly, it aligns with the motto of the 100th for continuing service. This project attempts to serve the community by bringing firsthand stories to the table. Secondly, this project is at heart an attempt to make society a little more just and fair for everybody. By addressing the underlying social stigmas that are associated with houselessness, I hope that legislators and students who will eventually become a part of our legislature will feel more comfortable about speaking about this issue. And then with this discussion, maybe solutions will pop up, new things, new ideas. And then finally, this project perpetuates important Japanese values of storytelling and local values like aloha. Further, this project, in fact, does perpetuate the legacy of the 100th. It's another initiative to preserve history, which is incredibly important as more information and data floods the internet. First-hand accounts or primary sources, even if anecdotal, will serve as an important window into the 21st century in perhaps the 100 years, just as we listen to the stories of World War II veterans. Additionally, this project utilizes a different approach to preserving history through entertainment, video, and audio. This method is more likely to capture the attention of interested viewers. This is especially important to consider because information overload has led to a reduction of attention span in recent years. All those kids on their iPads, they're destroying their attention span. Further, there are sorry history lovers, much more stimulating options available now than reading or hearing about straight history, whether it be from a teacher. No hate on history, I love it, but I know most of my classmates wouldn't agree. The anticipation of going on social media, video games, etc., all release more dopamine than reading history would. While high quality, fast-paced video and audio isn't the perfect solution, I do believe it is just one step in the right direction in our changing world. And then finally, it expands the reach of the 100th continued service to other veterans, especially if it were to appear on the 100th websites. I think it would be a great way to reach a larger audience and to spread the stories of these houseless veterans, which would be incredibly valuable for the whole community. So kind of looking forward into the future, just based upon the stories of the 100th, more community engagement is needed from the youth. We need more individuals like Spark Matsunaga, a 100th Battalion veteran. And there needs to be infrastructure in place to make community engagement more rewarding. So challenges like this. So, because after all, why should a student look into the community when there's a chemically more rewarding option on their phone? Additionally, camaraderie-based support systems like the 100th Clubhouse or even US Vets should be expanded. Looking at the 100th could be a viable option that would reduce the prevalence of veteran houselessness if there were a support system in place, because those guys, they used to keep each other in check. Finally, we need to discover higher dopamine methods of storytelling as it's known to dissolve barriers between different people groups. These are really changing times, and just as the 100th Battalion adapted to different situations, community change makers must also adapt to a new world that is full of not only distractions, but great opportunities. Thank you so much for listening to me today and for listening to my project. And I'd like to take this slide to thank everybody who has helped me through my journey. So first of all, there's the Houseless Kids, which were lots of fun to work with. You'll see me awkwardly sitting in the back since that was my first day there. On the bottom, you have Auntie Twinkle, who's actually the leader of Provisional Owainai. She really helped me a lot, and talking to her was super fascinating because she just knows so much about the dynamics of issues. There's Miss Goddard, who helped to fund this project. Dr. Cook, the director of US Vets, she so graciously allowed me to talk to her veterans and get all these stories. She helped them sign the forms, and she just is an awesome woman. There's Auntie Kathy, who works with Hui Aloha and Puohunua Owainai, and she was the one who introduced me. So without her, none of this could have been possible. And then finally, for the great Dr. Chinen, my mentor for this project, she helped so much, helping me learn more about sort of the sociological aspects of this issue. And without her, I wouldn't have learned as much as I did. And I definitely wouldn't have been able to connect different points with the 100th. So that's about it. Here's my works cited. And yeah, thank you so much for you guys' time. Any questions?
Well, I don't have a question, but I would like to commend you for your work. You can tell that you put in so much heart and soul, and you just immersed yourself in this. And I'm looking forward to listening to this again and hearing your presentation again. And maybe hopefully we can tap into your ideas as our club moves forward. Great job, Ken.
Thank you.
Mahalo. Mahalo nui loa, Ken Nakatsu, for sharing the knowledge and all that you've learned with us. And we also want to thank his advisor, Danny Goddard, and his mentor, Dr. Joyce Chinen. Thank you so much. And so as we move to our next presenter, please welcome to the stage, Shay Sakahara. Shay is a junior at Punahou.
Aloha, everybody. My name is Shea Sakahara, and as mentioned, I'm a junior in the class of 2023 at Punahou School. This is Tokuichi Hayashi, but to me, he was just Papa Toku. To those around him, he was a war hero. As an original member of the All-Nisei Battalion, the 100th Infantry Battalion, separate, he earned many honors like the United States Congressional Gold Medal and the French Legion of Honor, among many more. But to me, he was just a man sitting at the dinner table on Sundays. While I know him now to have fought in World War II, it was never something he talked about. Like many of the other members of the 100th, the details of that part of their life was never disclosed with their family. What we did know him for was his unwavering dedication to his values and faith. Empathy, equality, and hard work were among these values and are what the 100th Battalion and the 100th Club is built on, for continuing service. Papa Toku embodied this through his actions from working tirelessly at the Pearl Harbor shipyard as an electronic mechanic, a skill he developed through the GI Bill, providing education for veterans following World War II, to tinkering in his workshop under his Aiea home. It is my responsibility to carry on these values and his legacy through my actions of service. This is one of the reasons why I established Strong Start for Kids. Hello, my name is Shay Sakahara, and I'm the founder of Strong Start for Kids. I'm excited to share who we are and why our mission is to build a brighter future for children with tools to help them learn and grow. I believe in the possibility of every classroom. I believe in the possibility of every student. The possibility that when you give a child a pencil, they will write a story, and when you give a child an opportunity, they will start writing their own stories. My opportunity came when I was 11 years old. I had an idea that stemmed from a simple desire to give back to my former elementary school, but that desire took root way before then. I started attending Kailua Elementary as a preschooler at 3 years old, and from the start, everyone gave me so many reasons to love being there. They made learning fun, engaging, and accessible to everyone, even a little boy with leg braces and an IEP. From day one, they taught me all things were possible and that I wanted to give back to Kailua Elementary. So in 6th grade, I started Strong Start for Kids. As I mentioned earlier, this organization started as an idea inspired by so many who have helped me along the way. I was born with cerebral palsy. It affects everything I do, from getting dressed in the morning to participating in sports. CP has blessed me with a tremendous support system, as well as a unique perspective to be appreciative of what I can do instead of what I can't. Empowered by this perspective, I started noticing a real challenge that too many other students faced, but shouldn't: an inequity of resources. As someone living with a disability, I knew all too well how difficult it could be to start behind the line. For me, I needed extra help learning how to hold my lunch tray level and opening my milk carton. And for them, they needed extra help just buying crayons and pencils. But that's where our teachers stepped in. They made sure everyone had what they needed before lessons began. And if supplies ran out, they went and bought more, often with their own money. Being the son of an educator myself, I understand how hard teachers worked and how much they cared for their students, so each and every one of them could realize the possibility of a good education and a strong start in life. So yes, Strong Start for Kids started as an idea. An opportunity made that idea a reality, and with generous community support, I'm continuing to see the possibility. To all the educators out there, thank you. And to all the students in their care, start writing your own stories. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Auntie Kathy, Reverend David Turner, Miss Drusilla Tanaka, and Mr. David Fukuda for mentoring me with this project. I'd also like to thank my family and Mrs. Danny Goddard at Punahou School for supporting me with my journey with Strong Start for Kids. Mahalo.
And thank you very much for sharing your insights on resources and how you brought all of your ideas forward and creating something that will live on with you or without you, and that you can pass on to everyone else. That is phenomenal insight, and appreciate your wonderful, mature wisdom.
I wanted to say, Shay, that was such a fantastic presentation. Like, all of you guys have had great presentations, and that really encapsulates the giving back, the continuing service that the 100th Battalion established after the war. So wonderful job on that.
Thank you so much. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
So I would also like to thank his mentors, Reverend David Turner, David Fukuda, and Drusilla Tanaka. Mahalo nui.
I think
And as-
someone said, how can we help, Shay?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I'd like to include the link to my website in the chat. There you can find more information about the work we do, as well as if you'd like to get more involved, I will include my email in the chat where you can email me with any further questions and we can work out a possibility to work together and to create real change in our community. Thank you so much.
Again, mahalo nui lo. And as we move forward with our next, which is Aiea High School. We had a class at the Aiea High School peer education program that will be sharing a video of the projects that they're going to be doing next year. As this challenge triggered a fire under them, and sit back and you'll be able to see what they've got in store for their community at Aiea High School.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Aiea High School. A really special feature of our school, which few schools get, especially high schools, is a direct overview of Pearl Harbor. Despite the beautiful scenery, overlooking Pearl Harbor serves as a constant reminder about how the Pearl Harbor attack changed the lives of Japanese Americans in Hawaii and on the west coast of the United States. It also connects us to everything that happened during and around that time period. The 100th Battalion was one of the most inspiring groups witnessed in history. Learning about the problems they experienced and had to overcome, such as prejudice, discrimination, separation from their loved ones, and having to prove their loyalty, was truly inspiring. Their story is one of courage, perseverance, resilience, and bravery. They also showed humility and was willing to sacrifice everything they had or loved for everyone else. Today, teenagers face a new challenge. Due to the pandemic and distance learning, teenagers are dealing with mental health issues and problems with social and emotional learning. We hope the stories of the 100th Battalion will motivate teenagers to never give up, to push through adversity, and always persevere. We will start this campaign in the beginning of the 2022 to 2023 school year, and will probably involve at least 5 phases. For phase 1, we want to educate the students here about the problems the 100th Battalion faced, what they overcame, and how they really overcame it. For our suggested phase 2, it will be about the characteristics of the 100th Battalion. We will display characteristics like these in every classroom. Additionally, every quarter we would like to recognize students who exemplify these characteristics with a certificate or some type of reward. Now into phase 3. For phase 3, similar to the 100th Battalion and their slogan, Go for Broke, we would plan on putting slogans and quotes around our campus to encourage and inspire students. This can also be used to lead our 100th Battalion campaign. These are a few of them. For phase 4, in order to specifically target the issue at hand, we will also pass out handouts or put up posters on mental health and social-emotional learning tips. We would have 2 versions, one to help yourself and how to help someone else you may know. Additionally, we would also put up time and stress management information. For our final suggested phase, phase 5, we would want to put up posters and handouts on where to get help and who to contact. It is very important that students, teachers, and staff alike all know who to go to if they really need help. These are just a few of the ideas that we can do. Next year, we will do so much more and inspire our students the way the 100th Battalion inspired us. Thank you.
Mahalo, Aiea High School, for your insightful and very detailed plan on how to bring the characteristics of the 100th forward to your school and to those youth around you that are so important to our future and our present. So our next presenters, I do want to also thank their advisor, Mr. Mark Shimabukuro. He had a class that he proposed the challenge to, and they took it and ran with it. And now, as you can see, it will be turned into a school-wide program in the coming year. So as we move to our last, Iolani School. Iolani School, again, a class, and has brought forward a totally different way of looking at how the 100th has affected their thinking. And so with that said, Iolani School will be sharing their video that they presented to us.
Hi, my name is Noelle, and I am here to share about our project, 14x3 Hurricane Preparedness. We are the 1 Mile class, a service learning course focused on understanding and taking action for climate change. In the course, we learned about how climate change has a greater impact on vulnerable communities. We learned that because of climate change, the frequency and intensity of tropical storms is increasing, and the likelihood of one striking our island is greater. For our project, we wanted to focus our project on those in our community who need our help the most. We visited Palolo homes to learn how they support their residents during a time of crisis. We learned that trust, connection, and loyalty to one another are the values the residents hold true. We were inspired by their story, but also knew that during a crisis, like the pandemic, their community can easily be forgotten. In fact, at the start of COVID, the regular food donations from the food bank stopped. We know climate change is impacting all of us, and it's only going to get worse. But we also know that climate change doesn't affect all of us equally. Those who are most vulnerable are low-income populations, and disadvantaged communities across the country are the hardest hit and least resilient. When a hurricane makes landfall in Hawaii, are we prepared to care for those in need? The Hawaii Emergency Management Agency asks us to be prepared during hurricane season with a 2-week supply of food and water for everyone in your household. This is impossible for those who struggle financially. We learned about the ALICE, the 47% of households in Hawaii who are working but have no safety net and cannot purchase the needed food supplies. What we also realized is that everyone, including those who are financially stable and have the means of being prepared, will wait until the crisis or hurricane before running out to the stores and clearing the shelves of food and water. What this does is take much needed food away from those who have not stocked up. This is not okay, and we wanted to do something about it. At first, we had 2 ideas for solutions. For those who are most vulnerable, we wanted to create an app to connect them to sources of food during a crisis. That way, communities could receive the much-needed supplies of food and water. We learned from Mr. Chadbuck that actually this type of communication system is in place. Our second idea was to strongly encourage those who could afford it to get their supplies of food and water now, ahead of hurricane season. That way, the food and water could go to those who need it during a crisis. We came up with the 14x3 cookbook idea. We created a list of needed pantry items and other ingredients that households could purchase and have available from June to November. We rationalized that if the 53% of households in Hawaii are better prepared, our emergency personnel and food storages could be used for those in need only. We created this brochure to share with our community. Then we promoted our ideas at our school's farmers market held earlier this week. We prepared some of the dishes included barbecue pizza, which can be cooked without electricity. We also received recipes from various chefs to include in our cookbook of dishes that can be shared without electricity. And a couple of our recipes can be prepared in an easy-to-build solar oven. When we learned about the 100th Battalion, we were inspired by their stories and the way they demonstrated resilience and loyalty, especially during a time of crisis. They fought bravely for their country. Our idea to address food security on the island perpetuates the legacy of the 100th Battalion because it represents loyalty. We recognize that our island is in a dire situation when it comes to disaster preparedness. So we focused all hands on deck to devise a plan to share information on how we all can be ready. Just like the 100th Battalion remained loyal to the United States Army and fought in the war even while facing racism. We hope to fulfill the ideology of the 100th Battalion with our encouragement of everyone being prepared for a natural disaster, because this individual act is necessary for the survival of everyone, especially those who are most vulnerable. In closing, we invite you to demonstrate your loyalty and resilience by being prepared for hurricane season. Plan ahead, stock up on ingredients, and use our 14x3 cookbook of ideas. And please check out the Hawaii Emergency Management Disaster Preparedness website and download the readiness guides. Thank you for listening to our presentation, and mahalo for your support of this community. We thank many people for their support of this project. Mahalo.
Mahalo Iolani School. We really appreciate the video that was sent in, and we do want to thank their advisor, Miss Debbie Milliken. She is in attendance, but not on camera.
So can I ask a question? What the students learned at Iolani from this project is, I guess, the aspect of sharing. Is that pretty much what you think you come away with, the students came away with in taking on this challenge? You know, because what I'm getting is that I get the idea of the hoarding. You know, people in Hawaii tend to go overboard when there is a shipping crisis. You go to the store and you buy 10 cases of toothpaste, of toilet paper, paper towels. And what the kids are saying is that, you know, not to do that, that they learned from the vets that you need to step back, those that can afford it, to step back and wait and share with those that cannot go out and readily purchase all of these things when a crisis occurs. During the war, they were told not to share their rations, and yet I think what they're saying is that the vets during the war didn't share that philosophy, that they needed to share. Is that kind of the theme of this presentation?
Hi, Joyce, it's Debbie. Yes, I think you got it.
Yeah.
You know, it's really, it really came down to them saying, you know, we all need to do our part, and recognizing that through hoarding and not being prepared, we're preventing others in our community from having what they need in a time of crisis. It happened during the pandemic, and it could certainly happen with any crisis that we face, especially one of these natural disasters.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that the kids can see that and bring that aspect of what the vets had to do to make sure everybody survived, not just the fittest and the strongest, right? It's a different kind of philosophy, I guess, that some people may have. You know, the strongest survive, right? And that's not necessarily what we're talking about here. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mahalo to the students of the climate change class at Iolani School. Mahalo. And so as we come to the next junction, which is our closing remarks, let me welcome Janice Sakoda to the stage.
Thank you, Sheila. So the photo there is of my dad, Gary Uchida, and he served with headquarters. And I am currently a member of the board of directors of the 100th Infantry Battalion Veterans Organization. Shane and Cy, Ken, Shay, Iolani students, and Aiea students, thank you so much for your insightful presentations. This is a lot to digest, and I'm looking forward to rethinking about all your presentations and listening to this again. It's clear that you spent a great deal of time on your projects. Your efforts are clearly reflected in your presentations. I know that I speak for other descendants of 100th Infantry Battalion veterans when I say that we are truly moved that you have chosen to participate in this, our first PBL challenge. You successfully identified a problem that you recognized in your community and worked hard to find a possible solution to it by incorporating a character value that 100th Infantry Battalion soldiers demonstrated in training and in combat. If you approach other challenges that you face in life as you did this one, I have no doubt that you'll be successful. As you learned in the course of working on this PBL, the men who served in the 100th Infantry Battalion were trailblazers. They were the first Americans of Japanese ancestry organized as a segregated military unit and the first sent into combat in Europe. So much rested on their shoulders, on the battlefields in America and here at home in Hawaii. I want you to know that we consider you, students, as trailblazers also. You were the first to accept and complete this PBL challenge, and in doing so, you opened the doors for others to take on future challenges that we may offer. You heard Iolani, Aiea High School would like to take this on as a challenge for one of their grades, and another school is would like to take this as a challenge, and that's like 700 students. So you have truly opened the door. On this, the 80th anniversary on the formation of the 100th Infantry Battalion Separate, we are grateful for our education partners for sharing their time and expertise. Sheila B., Sherilyn Lau, Wendell Tashiro, and to our 100th Battalion descendant mentors, Reverend David Turner, David Fukuda, Drusilla Tanaka, Charlotte Yamamoto, Bev Descalzi, Carrie Yamamoto, Carrie Miyashiro, and Joyce Chinen, and to the descendants who provided feedback, Surumi, Hamasu, Joyce Doi, Carly Ikuma. I'm sorry that Elsie was not able to log in. She had some technical problems. And we thank you, students, for helping us share the stories, values, and accomplishments of the soldiers of the One Puka Puka. Thank you so much.
And as we come to the end of this evening, aloha and mahalo to all for joining us tonight. With you, the presentations and this celebration have been felt, and the voices of the 100th Infantry Battalion lives on now and into the future. Good evening. That concludes the evening, and thank you so very much for joining us and staying with us for the entire time.
My final word is thank you everybody for being here tonight. And again, I probably said enough, but thank you so much to Dr. Chinen for her sharing her wealth of knowledge with me. It was really interesting learning from her. And yeah, I look forward to seeing what you guys create with other schools and other students.
Thank you.
One quick thing to all the students, would they be interested in being interviewed about their process so that we can share that with future students as well? You guys don't have to answer now, but if you do, I'm gonna just make everybody get a hold of Sherilyn. Okay. And then that way I'll work with you when we do the next one, and we'll get the students, and I'll send out a crew to do interviews if the students are willing.
Yeah, I mean, should that be a possibility? Yeah, feel free to email me. As I said before, I'd be more than happy to assist you with and to be interviewed for any of the work that you need.
Nice. Thank you guys, all of you, everybody that will interview. I hope all of you do. You'll be an inspiration for that next set. And as you guys know, your peers need a hook. They need to understand why they're going to look into the 100th. If they don't have a grandfather of their own, they're going to need a reason to connect to this. And I think you guys sharing your stories is a nice way to connect. So again, thank you guys immensely.